Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Good to see so many people joining us today. Just wait a couple of minutes for a few more people. This is probably one of the most important webinars that you could ever attend if you're looking at crowdfunding. And the reason that I say that is because the whole topic here is crowdfunding right for your business? And the reason I want us to think about this is, crowdfunding is a fabulous way of raising money for your business, but it's not right for everyone and it's not right for every business. So what I want you to do is to really think about it carefully and work out all the benefits. But also, a couple of things, like it may be that crowdfunding is not right for your business, or it may be that your business isn't quite ready yet. So I just want to save you some time and, go through everything today. A couple of some slides that you've seen before, but we're going to get some new slides in there as well. So I think on that note, I'm going to switch over to some content. So give me 2 seconds. Share my screen. And we'll start at the beginning. So hopefully you can see the starting slide is crowdfunding right for your business. So if you haven't met me before, Victoria Bennett, I'm the founder and CEO of the Crowdfunding Hub. I was born in London, in Wimbledon. If you're watching this live, yes, Wimbledon started today, the tennis. Yes, I have been many times. Absolutely fabulous place, and hopefully should be on your bucket list. I studied biochemistry at Edinburgh University, which you might think that's an interesting one, but typically we don't do marketing and business as first degrees in the UK. And I decided to use my science in a business environment and worked with brands like Tide, Pampers, Ariel, TD Bank, and Greggs, which has got about 1,700 bakery stores in the UK. I ran my first crowdfunding campaign when I came to Canada and hadn't got a clue what it was all about. Was asked to run it as a volunteer on a board, and just completely blew my mind the value of crowdfunding, and then set up my own business to actually run crowdfunding campaigns because I realized there was a gap in the market there. So that's a bit about me. What I'd love you to do is just to put into the chat who you are, where you're from, and also what you want to get out of this session. And it'd be great if you could just put in the chat sort of the type of business that you have, so that I can get an idea and make sure we address your specific questions during this session. So who'll benefit from this webinar? Well, I hope you all will, particularly entrepreneurs and businesses who are looking to raise capital, whether that be startups or growth capital. So we're going to make sure that you assess whether crowdfunding is right for your business, understand the benefits of crowdfunding, and as you've probably gathered, realizing where crowdfunding isn't a good fit. I'm just going to sort of go back sort of the options for raising capital. Many of you will start off with bootstrapping. And basically, it's just watching every penny, making sure that you spend as little as possible, and just basically the bare minimum. It's a great way to get a business going, but sometimes you can, to use an idiom, you can cut off your nose to spite your face. You can, actually you should be spending some money, and the rewards for spending that bit of money can be huge. But, if you don't always have it, then bootstrapping is the way to go. You can get a loan, but as we know, current climate, sometimes those loans are quite difficult to get, particularly from banks. Banks are often looking for, say, 3 years of audited accounts, which is a startup you don't always have. Some of the more progressive banks will be looking at sort of startups, but often you'll find that there is quite a limitation on that one. Friends and family. Well, that's great if you've got friends and family with deep pockets, but we don't always have that. So, great place to start, but not always an option. Venture capital. So venture capital is like the rocket fuel. You get venture capital money, and you will grow exponentially. They'll put this, people in place to support you. Fantastic. Typically, they don't do too early stage. Some will do early stage, but often they'll come in at a later stage. And, one thing just to watch out is, they will often direct the business the way that they see fit. And so you might lose a bit of control. Just always watch out for the right VC partners. Angel investors. So those are typically individuals with some cash and who often want to be a bit hands-on. You do get some that are a bit hands-off, but they'll still need updates. But they want to back businesses that they believe in and that have great potential. And then, of course, there's crowdfunding, and we'll go into more details. I just want to say, because I know this came up from the last presentation, what I haven't got on here is grants. And always look to grants, especially sort of post-COVID now. There's a lot of grants out there. So have a look, see what there is specifically around sort of business grants, particularly if you fit into a category. So say female-led, BIPOC-led, you may find some additional grants coming through there. So there's often grants for younger people setting up businesses. So have a look, see what there is. The benefit of grants is it's what we call non-dilutive. So you still own 100% of the company at the end of it. And that can be quite good. Sometimes you have to mix those grants and say, right, I'm going to raise, they'll give you 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, whatever, but they may ask you to put a third forward. So you may need to mix it up with some of these other options out there. So crowdfunding is an excellent way for companies to raise capital and expand your network with a group of advocates who believe in you and want you to be successful. So that's one of the big upsides, is that you have a group of advocates who believe in you and want you to be successful. But one of the things about this, and this is where it comes in, is I want you to be really quite tough on yourself and tough on your business, because it will save you many hours, much money later on by doing so now. And when you talk about your business, are you passionate about what you do? And do you get other people excited about what you do? Or when you talk about your business and the problem you solve, is it a problem that other people can see? And the reason I say that is because one of the big things about crowdfunding is telling your story. That's why we've got a microphone on this picture. You need to be able to tell your why. And your why comes into a number of different things. So one is, what is the problem you solve? So you've probably heard me before talk about, the person who came up with this idea for solving cold sores more quickly. I've never suffered from a cold sore, but I know many people who do, and I understand it's a real pain. I can see there's a need there. We're working with a client at the moment, and they're developing a pain-free needle. So if you have a pet and, every day you have to inject it because it's got diabetes, well, that pet doesn't understand why you keep hurting it every day, but you need to. Imagine being able to have a pain-free needle. Or 26% of the population are scared of needles. Imagine having a pain-free needle. There's a huge opportunity there. So you can see the need. But do you notice something else is I've been able to tell you a story around that need. And that's one thing I want you to think really carefully about, is can you tell a story about the need that will connect with people? Because as you can see, you need a group of advocates who believe in you and want you to be successful. So it's they believe in that you and your company understand the need and can address the need, can meet that need better than anybody else there at the moment, and that you have a team in place who can deliver what you say you're going to deliver. So this is the key thing here, is can you communicate your story? And I've just come back from Collision, which is North America's largest technical conference. And I was going around talking to people about crowdfunding. And I'll tell you now, they had descriptions up, and I missed a lot of companies because I'm like, that's going to be a tough sell to tell your story. it's very much a niche, and you've got to explain that and that may not be to what we call retail investors or or backers. So if you're looking at a rewards crowdfunding campaign, you've got to be able to make a connection with the people who back your campaigns. And so being able to tell a story will be definitely part of that. Oh, so just in case we missed it, so crowdfunding is raising funding online from a large group of people. So you need that group of people. So we've started to talk about these 3 elements for a successful crowdfunding raise. So we've talked about an outstanding product or service that meets the needs better than anything else out there. And, that you can tell the story behind it. So can you do that? If you can, that's fantastic. But if you can't, could you identify a niche that would understand that need and would understand your solution? And one of the key things is making sure that you get across that you're passionate about the need, not passionate about your solution. Because if you're passionate about the solution, you make it about you. If you make it passionate about the need, then you make it about the backers. And so you're going to get a much better emotional connection there. So yeah, think really hard about, your offering. So one of the things I would always say is, what the need is. So as I say, pain-free needle. First thing I want you to do is Google it and see what the solutions out there are, and be really harsh on yourself. Do you really have a better product or service than what's out there? In the case of the pain-free needle, we looked at a number of different products out there, and we came to realize that there were a lot of drawbacks on them. It could be price. They were a lot more expensive. It could be dosing size. It could be that actually they didn't work as effectively, or that they weren't as pain-free as they were purported to be. So that's when we knew that the product that we were looking to crowdfund really was something that we could stand up and say was better than anything else in the marketplace. So Google is always the first place to go, because that's where everyone goes. And look through at least the first couple of pages, because you might have, say, there's a new product out there that you might not be aware of. And be honest, do you have that best product or service out there? The next thing is the team. And there's a couple of things about the team. One is people want to know you have a team that can deliver behind your objectives. So, if you're doing, say, a rewards campaign, and like I always talk about the watch I wear, which is, it works with my Android, and it was the best one out there at the time. They had a team, which meant I felt more confident that they could deliver behind the campaign. Now, I will say they were a little late, but I did get my watch eventually. And so that's one thing that people are looking for. People are also looking for, when you do your bios, I'm always looking for 3 things in those bios. I want to see, what you've done in the past from a business perspective. So, the fact that you've, worked in IT for 10 years. Yeah, that's great. That shows you've got a bit of experience. And I'm not saying experience is everything. It's not, I've worked with startups where everybody's straight out of university or even earlier, and still successful. But you want to perhaps have some people on an advisory board who perhaps have got that experience just to help you out, or you've been through an accelerator or something just to help you, because experience sometimes is something you just can't replicate any other way. So, say if you had that 10 years working in IT, the next thing is give an example of actually where you've achieved something. So perhaps if you're a CFO and you've taken a company public, perhaps if you're a product developer and you've launched a product and it's taken market share, perhaps you've written a book and it's become a bestseller on the Amazon charts. Any of those sort of things that are relevant to the business that you're looking to crowdfund for, add those on there. And then the other part, and this is the most vital thing, and you probably guessed it from the previous section, this is probably the most vital thing for crowdfunding, is your why, your passion. Because anybody can get up and go to work on a good day. But what's going to make sure that you get up and go to work on a bad day? So if you think of people who've been doing rewards campaigns, in the last couple of years, and you've had the Suez Canal blocked and COVID and just distribution and nightmares. And, I've seen companies who have just moved heaven and earth to ensure that backers get their products. And they've also ensured that they've kept them fully informed, what the delays are, why the delays are, and what they've done to mitigate them. And that passion is what will keep people coming back and backing your campaign time and time again. In the case of, say, running an equity campaign, it's exactly the same. I mean, the number of 8-year overnight successes out there is unbelievable. Let's hope it doesn't take you 8 years. But often people think, oh, it's an overnight success. But actually, it's been a hell of a lot of work beforehand. And I think any of the entrepreneurs on this call probably full well know what it's like to sort of, be working ridiculous hours, having to miss things out. And we all try our best not to do it. But there are times when you're running a business and you just have to do it. So being able to show that passion is fantastic. And that's what they're looking for in the team. They're wanting to know your why. Why is this important to you? And where did you see this? Where did you see this need first? And why did you get sort of interested in it? So make sure with your team you're really communicating that. And then the third element for a successful crowdfunding raise, and this is the one where you just, it may be when we say is crowdfunding right for your business, you've hit 1 and 2, but you don't have a crowd. Well, that doesn't mean you can't run a crowdfunding campaign. You just need to spend a bit more time building your crowd. And a bit like we were saying earlier, that you might have a very niche product. So you might actually only have a very small number of people that you can, who might be interested because they might understand the need. And so that will make it, you have to think quite carefully about whether you want to run a crowdfunding campaign. I mean, if it's a niche, there's often ways of tracking that niche down. So, I always like things like LinkedIn. So you might have in your own network people, but you might, reach out through LinkedIn to find people in a specific job description to find them. So that you can, introduce yourself and see if they'd be interested in your crowdfunding campaign. Well, actually, let's focus it in on what your products or service is. When you're looking to start your campaign, you need to make sure that you're compliant, so meeting all the requirements of the platform. But you also need to make sure that your crowd is primed and ready. So you can build a crowd, you can borrow a crowd or buy a crowd, and watch the other webinars for information on that. If you don't feel that you can build, buy, or borrow a crowd, then probably crowdfunding isn't right for you. Because if you're thinking about, say, for every 100 people who go to your campaign page, perhaps only 2 to 5% will actually go through the process and back you, which is, if you're thinking of, multiply that up to work out how many people you want on your campaign, that you're going to need quite a few people, and to even get them in to the campaign page, you're going to have to attract them before that. So if you've got a small crowd, and if your potential crowd is quite small, then perhaps crowdfunding is not right for you. You could perhaps do a private placement, or you might find one of the other ways of raising capital for your project. But if you do have a crowd, you do need to make sure that crowd is ready for you. So typically you have talked to them about buying your product or service. And this time you're getting them either to back your product or service. So, to get the latest, greatest thing, that's a pretty natural extension from the language you've used before. But if you're getting them to invest in your company, then that's a very different conversation from buying or selling a product. And so in that instance, you're actually having to educate them on your business, on how your business is going to make money and how they're going to make money. And so you need to do that priming beforehand to get them really excited so that on day one, and this is across all crowdfunding campaigns, if you look at the Crowdfunding Center, you'll see their stats. They say 11% of all funding, if it comes in on the first day, and 33% in the first week, you have a very high chance of a successful raise. So you want to make sure everyone's primed and ready to go. So you've told them the story, they've got that emotional connection, they're excited about it, so that on day one, they come in and they invest or back your campaign. And they also understand the process. So for some people, they may have never done a crowdfunding campaign before. And with backing a campaign, so if you're doing a rewards campaign, they need to understand that you're going to do your best to be able to deliver, but they're not buying something. So there's an education piece that has to happen there. In the case of an equity crowdfund or a peer-to-peer, they have to realize that this is very high risk and high risk, high reward. And the other side to it is also that because especially when the securities are involved, so if you're doing common shares or anything like that, because of the securities involved, it does mean that you as an individual investing will be asked specific questions from the platform. So you just need to prep people up. So 3 elements for successful crowdfunding raise. You need to make sure that you meet those 3 elements and that they're also fully planned and prepared for. And in this case, when I say planned and prepared for, we typically talk about a 90-day preparation to run your campaign. And then you run your campaign. In Europe, they tend to be closer to 30 days, I think partly because people are more used to them in Europe. In North America, they tend to be closer to 45 days because there's a bit more education needed around crowdfunding. But there is a bit of preparation around it, really, to get those 3 things done even prior to kicking off your crowdfunding preparation. So we've talked a bit about the different types of crowdfunding. So just to summarize from that previous slide, if you're looking at doing a donations crowdfund, make sure that you can tell your story, your why. Why should people give their money? And what's the feeling of accomplishment they will give? And also make sure that you keep people informed, the difference that their money has made. It's one of the reasons that I sort of have recommended here Fundraiser over, say, GoFundMe, because it just makes it easier to keep people informed. So that will be a good one to use. In the case of reward crowdfunding, this is perhaps when you've got an MVP, a minimum viable product, but you don't have the money to actually take that product and get it manufactured. So this allows you to get the money up front and then go to the manufacturer with the money and get, say, the first 1,000 made. So these are what we call rewards crowdfunds, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, some the 2 big guys. Just launched in the last week or 2 has been BackerKit's crowdfunding platform. Still think it's quite early days for them, and Crowdfunder as well. So interesting to see the market opening up. And if you have a niche, we've talked a bit about niches in this call. If you have a niche, say if you're if you develop games, or if you write books, or if you do plays or films, you will find that there are other rewards crowdfunding platforms that might well be a better fit for you. Peer-to-peer lending. So in the case of peer-to-peer lending, it's been tough because interest rates have been so low, but they're now going up. And so there might be some more money coming into peer-to-peer lending, and it may be a way to get some funds for your business, and that say when the bank hasn't been able to back you. Again, still need to have those three constituent parts, but consider that if you need cash to build your business, and it's beyond just a thing, or that's the thing with Kickstarter. You've got rewards. Somebody gives you money, you give them an item or a service. There's that sort of relationship. Whereas with the peer-to-peer lending, in fact, with the peer-to-peer royalty or equity investment, it could be to grow your business. It could be to expand your production. It could be to hire people. Those are the use of funds. One thing to bear in mind, it should not be to pay back shareholder loans. People also want to make sure that you're not just doing it to line your pockets. So, I would say keep salaries very much under control. And that's with any of the peer-to-peer lending, royalty or equity investments. If you're looking for this just to pay you out, then crowdfunding isn't right for you. This is to build your business, to build a successful business that you can get a return and they can get a return. So, on these three sides or three types, really look carefully at what your use of funds are. Royalty, so in the case of royalty, often if you have a thing, that might be a good way, or something you're selling, that might be a good one to go down the royalty route. I always liken it to Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, because that's where people have seen it, where you have an item and say a dragon will, I'll give you the 100,000, but I want a 5% royalty. And then when we, in perpetuity or for the next 5 years, so they get their money back and a bit more. So that's another option, if the peer-to-peer lending is still quite tight. I can see it opening up with interest rates rising. And then the final route, which is, probably the most common out of those three, is the equity investment. Different platforms you might see in Canada, Front Fund, Equivesto. You've got Seeders, Crowdcube over in Europe. You've got Seed Invest, Seed Ups, Start Engine in the States. Lots of different platforms in the States. And people get an ownership stake. So this is the securities we were talking about. And so, why wouldn't you do that? Well, one of the things is it's very transparent. So you put everything up on the platform, everything. The platform sees everything. You can choose what you put up. Typically you put a video up and a story. You might put your financials up. If you don't put your financials up, the financials will need to be available under an NDA or something like that. Often people are really scared about, I don't want to give, I don't want to give everything away. As I always say, I don't want to show my knickers. But you're already there. You've already done it. Even if you show what you would show on a crowdfunding campaign, it will still take at least 6 months for your competition to catch up with you. So I hear you. I hear your concerns. But, I would also say just measure them, because if you get this shot of funding, that will allow you to leapfrog again. And so you'll be, again, ahead of the curve. And you'll also have all these ambassadors who are passionate about you and your business. So just one thing to be mindful of, if you don't feel comfortable with that, I would say think really carefully. If you can get over it, which would be great, then, if you can't get over it, then, probably equity crowdfunding, equity investment isn't right for you. The other thing is you do have to have things such as audited accounts, which if you're a brand new company, really simple. You need to, they will do due diligence on the team. I can remember in 1 week, there were 2 crowdfunding campaigns. I was working on one, but not the other. And the one that I was working on, the guy had been arrested by the RCMP for having the highest THC cannabis ever that the RCMP had come across. And then another guy, the campaign I wasn't working on, but it was this, they had a guy had been done for securities fraud. Well, the guy for securities fraud, you can imagine that didn't progress on any further. So they were not allowed to go on the platform. And it makes sense. The platforms are there to protect the companies and to protect the investors. They do a thing called KYC, KYP, know your customer, KYC, and KYP, know your product. So when they're doing their KYP, and this is where I say the platform gets to see everything, they would be checking everything out. Something like that would be a red flag to a platform. In the case of the highest THC, that was when cannabis was illegal in Canada, and it was then legal. So, and he was running a cannabis farm, so it actually wasn't seen as a negative for his business. But I mean, that's the sort of level of detail. So, think very carefully about your business and how ethically run it is, and the funding to date, because that's the sort of level of detail that will go into it. So that might count you out. So just keep that in mind. So got to the end of the presentation. I'm going to stop sharing and come back. So hopefully you've got a bit of an insight into whether crowdfunding is right for your business. Now, in the community, feel free to ask questions. I'll dip in there and answer them, or the rest of the team is. As you've seen, there's quite a big team working on this. So we're happy to answer any questions that you have in the team, and also answer them for your, other members of the community. And if you feel that crowdfunding might be right for your business, then I suggest have a look at sort of some of the material about the planning stage, because it's good for you to get a handle on that. This is not quick and this is not cheap money. The indication that the number that's usually thrown out there is you should spend about 10% of what you want to raise on advertising. Now, sometimes if you've got a huge crowd, hundreds of thousands, it's easier to activate, and you wouldn't need to spend that sort of funds. But if you're building or buying that crowd, then you might need to spend that. So just keep that in mind as well. But hopefully you'll get some more information off that webinar. So thank you everybody for joining today. And pop any questions into the chat and we'll be happy to help.